AXE Judgment Day might be the most unexpected smash hit mainstream comic book event of the last few years. Welcome back, Nerd Squad. I'm your host, Amanda McKnight. For those of you who don't know AXE Judgment Day, AXE stands for Avengers vs. X-Men vs. Eternals, and it is an event that sees all three superhero groups turn against one another for various reasons. Why are they compelled to fight? What does Judgment Day mean or stand for? And how could a premise as seemingly juvenile and ridiculous as this actually be good? I have two words for you: Kieran Gillen. Join me as we count down the top 10 biggest Marvel Judgment Day moments so far. Number 10. The Machine. Well, this is technically a big moment and revelation from the Eternals series by Kieran Gillen that precedes the AXE event. Some of you may not have been reading Eternals, so I figured it was still an important one to include here because it's really relevant and really cool. But also, go read the latest Eternals series because it is amazing, and honestly, it's too short-lived for how awesome it was. You should go read it. I wish Kieran Gillen could just keep writing Eternals for, I don't know, into the foreseeable future. But I gotta say, I am happy that we have him on Immortal X-Men, and you know, if we gotta have one or the other, I get it, but Eternals was so good. In Eternals, we learned about how the Machine actually has its own personality and its own voice. The Machine being the thing that actually resurrects the Eternals every time they die. And honestly, I think it has become one of my favorite characters in the Eternals series. Machine is so cool and so sassy sometimes. In AXE, the Machine serves as a kind of narrator at times, which is also really fun and super cool. Honestly, you could just read this event just for that narration and likely be pretty content with it. That's how good the narration is. While Neil Gaiman and John Romita Jr. actually created the Machine in Volume 3 of the Eternals, Gillen actually helped give it an amazing voice and characterization in his 5th volume of that series. Number 9. Eternals vs. Mutants. This really isn't just about Eternals even versus X-Men. This conflict extends way beyond that, as we learn in AXE Eve of Judgment issue number 1. Here it's revealed that Prime Eternal Druig has an agenda against all mutants. It turns out he wants to kill them all. Why? Well, because he claims the mutants are actually deviants. That is, that they have grown to reach beyond what they should. They have deviated excessively, which is, after all, what Eternals are meant to fight against as one of their own prime directives. Druig, however, doesn't really care as much about killing mutants, deviants, as he does about cementing his own position as Eternal Prime. The Machine was really hoping that Druig would be content to have simply achieved this title, which happened, by the way, in the Eternal series. If you're wondering where you can find that story, like I said, you should read it. But alas, Druig is too paranoid to feel secure and content and wants some accolades to add to his name, so he can be like the greatest Prime Eternal ever, which he could get if he destroyed the mutants in the name of what the Eternals are meant to stand for: eliminating deviants. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, you should go check out our new channel, Most Amazing Top 10 Anime. It is really cool, and we want you to go and give all the anime manga love that you have over to the channel. And over to James. Say hi to James while you're over there. Number 8. The Secret of the Eternals' Resurrection. This is another thing that, like the Machine's quirky personality, was actually covered in the Eternals series. However, for those of you who haven't gotten there yet, this is also covered in Judgment Day, more specifically being recapped in AXE Eve of Judgment, so you can, be in on the secret, because it's pretty integral to what's happening here with the Eternals. And so for some, this is probably a pretty big revelation because, like I said, I don't think everyone that's reading this event has read Eternals. What we learn here is that the Machine actually resurrects mutants by sacrificing a human life from Earth to do so. This is the reason that Phastos is actually imprisoned, kinda. He attempted to destroy the Machine upon learning of this revelation, but he didn't realize that the Machine is actually intrinsically tied to the Earth. In fact, it is the Earth. So destroying the Machine actually means destroying the world. But initially, Phastos thought it would actually be a solution for Eternals' immortality and actually save a ton of human lives that would, be sacrificed to resurrect Eternals whenever they fell. Ikaris also must live with this revelation, as must the rest of the Eternals, and for Ikaris it's especially difficult as his interpretation of one of their prime directives to protect the Machine was that this also meant protecting the humans of Earth. So you can see his contradictory dilemma, because to keep the Machine going means you're gonna have to kill some humans. It's not great. Number 7. Forge Multitasks. I love Forge so much. And I love this new X-Men team we've gotten out of the last election at the Hellfire Gala. It is so awesome. It's just like the more I think about this team, the more I'm like, this is actually like a really cool team. This is the moment that has me itching to read more of this team together though, despite the fact that I believe, sadly, Jerry Dugan is actually going to be leaving this book. In issue number 13 of the X-Men, which is still written by Dugan at this point, we get a look into how the Eternals attacked Krakoa and attempted to defeat the mutant island. The Eternals sick giant kaiju-like beings on Krakoa, also Eternals themselves. These giant Eternals are known as the Hex. That's the name of their subgroup. The Hex attack Krakoa, and Forge is not even intimidated into donning battle armor in response. That's just so Forge. Instead, he brings out the big guns and he waits for the right moment to strike while lounging in tropical attire and sipping a drink out of a pineapple. It's a fantastic moment that feels super Forge. Forge successfully takes out one of the giant Eternals that looks like a dragon. Unfortunately, he does only have one magic nanite bullet, and you know, that was it. So the X-Men are gonna have to figure out what to do about the rest of the army of Hex who are still headed towards the island. Number 6. Ikaris makes a deal. But not just any deal. Ikaris talks to Jean Grey and in so doing decides that he will help Jean with Druig's invasion of Krakoa. To defeat the Hex, the mutants must venture to where they're being transported to Earth from, but there are a few problems. 1. Only Eternals can actually enter that area, and 2. Uranos, one of the most deadly Eternals, is currently there, surrounded by an armory of endless weapons. So yeah, might be kinda tricky for even someone as powerful as Jean to deal with that and get out alive. Oh, and while Ikaris is willing to help, the deal only stands for him to get the mutants in there even, who need to be ready at a moment's notice to go with him if Jean can ensure that no Eternals are killed. In typical Ikaris fashion, being extremely just to a fault, especially with the revelation about the machine plaguing his conscience. If any Eternals are killed, the deal will be off. Number 5. The 5 are broken. Wow, I didn't even intend to put the 5 at 5, but here we are. When Krakoa is attacked, Jack of Knives is also deployed to kill as many as he can and of course get the 5, who Prime Eternal Druig knows about from his alliance with Orcus. The shocking part is that they actually succeed in this. Egg falls and is unable to be protected during this attack. The good news is Egg had made some extra eggs before he died, meaning that the 5, even without one of their key members, was able to actually bring him back to life, thank goodness. But for a moment the 5 were broken, and for a few moments upon reading Judgment Day issue number 1, you likely were like me and you lived in fear that the resurrection days of Krakoa were over. It was a really close one there for a second. Number 4. Isca the Unbeaten changes sides. In X-Men Red issue number 5, we learn of what happens to Arakko. This issue, by the way, is crazy, it's so good. We know from the main Judgment Day series that Arakko was attacked by Uranos, and presumably hit pretty hard by them. And if you're thinking, ha, I mean it's Arakko, how bad can it be? The answer is really freaking bad. Uranos is released from his cell by Druig for exactly 1 hour. Within 20 minutes, he had already put a huge dent in Arakko. Isca herself during the hour is forced to change sides due to her mutant power, which isn't a good sign. Isca's power, for those that don't know, is that she'll always win, but this means that her power has told her that Arakko winning is not possible if she's turning on them. So that's a really bad sign. Good for Isca though, because she actually does win, she survives, she gets to live another day, with Nightcrawler teleporting her away to help Arakko's odds after she turns on them. Nightcrawler's solution is basically like, well if Isca isn't here, then her power can't like affect the outcome. You know what I mean? Bad for Arakko, as they now have to face Uranos without either Isca or Nightcrawler, and Isca also ended up breaking the Great Ring of Arakko when she killed Idil, one of her fellow council members. The really bad part with all of this though is that Uranos is successful and kills almost everyone on Arakko. And Arakko in X-Men Red was revealed to not believe in resurrection. So they have rejected that Krakoan gift, and as such, all of those who died will basically never come back to us. At least these mutants aren't going to come back from mutant resurrection protocols. Number 3. Heartless Magneto. Magneto was killed during the events of X-Men Red issue number 5. He puts up a good fight, but in the end Uranos wins, getting him right in the heart. But here's the thing about Arakko. As we learn in that issue, you should always confirm the kill when you're dealing with anybody from Morocco. These are hard mutants cut from a different cloth, and so it is no surprise that, other than Isca, a few people are going to survive the brutality of this, especially as Uranos only has a limited time on the planet and foolishly does not confirm each and every kill, which, you know, he probably should have done that. A few do survive, including Xylo and Lotus Logos of the Great Ring, and of course Magneto. Magneto may have been punched through the heart and no longer have one, but he has his powers and iron in his blood, and that is enough for him to basically will his blood to keep moving through his body, using the iron to kind of create, I don't know, like it's just like a glowing orb, but to me I kind of think of it as like an engine that'll replace his heart. Of course, he'd probably have to keep thinking about it because he'd be using his power to move the blood. Magneto is just always being a badass is basically the moral of the story, and it's so cool. It's so cool to read. Number 2, Recipe for a God. One group of the Eternals has a plan to defeat Druig by creating a god. They kidnap evil geneticist Mr. Sinister, who currently is a little less evil, working with the mutants instead of against them, of course, on Krakoa. With his and the Avengers' help, using their headquarters, which is the body of a dead Celestial, they set out to make their plan happen. The good news is they succeed, rewriting the programming of the Celestial to make it more aligned with their own beliefs and principles when it awakens. The bad news is the progenitor, which is the name of the Celestial, comes back to life only to inform our heroes that in 24 hours everyone on Earth will also be judged, as they feel those living there have caused so much harm that they too should perhaps be destroyed. They have till then to convince the progenitor that their first impression of Earth and of everyone on it is incorrect. Number 1, mutants equals deviants? So the funny thing is that Druig, while sort of fabricating a connection between deviants and mutants with dramatic interpretation of excess deviation, actually may have been onto something. When the Celestial comes online and threatens the world, the Quiet Council must decide what to do and possibly take action. However, as they are talking about using some potential secret weapons, Emma Frost reveals she is one of her own. She has made an alliance with the Deviants, who head to Krakoa to help in the fight against the Eternals. The hilarious and amazing part is when Crow reveals to Cyclops that Deviants can use mutant gates, likely thanks to their genetics being so similar to mutants. So perhaps mutants are deviants after all. Which moments have been your favorite so far? Are you reading AXE Judgment Day, and if not, are you planning to check it out soon? Let us know in the comments below. This has been Top 10 Nerd, and I'm your host Amanda McKnight. I'll see you next time, where hopefully we'll get to discuss more AXE, but until then, you stay nerdy, YouTube.